Temperance Elizabeth Collins. She's my firstborn, who's had a harder life in her 4 years than I have in 40. Timpy, as we call her, was born with an arachnoid cyst on her brain. An arachnoid cyst is a non-cancerous fluid-filled sac that grows on your brain, brainstem, spinal cord, or I think that's about it. And sometimes they need surgery to be corrected, and sometimes people can live a lifetime without having any issues. The news of her cyst broke to us about a week before her birth. Had a routine checkup, and we were shocked. Panic set in, and over the next 6 months, we tried to put it as far away from us as we could. I mean, I don't know how else you could even kind of put that into words. But at 6 months is when we were supposed to find out if it had to be operated on or if she could live and it'd be fine. Here it is, 6-month mark. We're sitting in the waiting room after my daughter had her MRI. The doctor walked in and sat us down and explained to us that it had indeed grew in size, and to the point to where the left side of her brain was pushed to the right side, and that there was so much pressure on it from all the fluids, which is spinal fluid, and they were just amazed that she didn't have any learning difficulties or anything of that nature. After discussing our options, as very few as there were, we decided that surgery was the only thing to do. So we got it scheduled. Timpy'd be getting brain surgery 2 weeks after her first birthday. Now, not only were we terrified, we felt guilty, like it was something we did that put her that way. And I mean, even still to this day, I know a little bit more about it now, but I still feel like you still have that feeling that you did something to hurt your child, and it's not a good feeling. So Timpy was on track to undergo a procedure called a craniotomy. Fun thing. It's where they cut out a piece of your skull. Now in children, some children, I'll say, it's possible because their skull is not fully formed yet, so once it's cut out, it'll just grow right back over it. I mean, it's amazing what the human body will do. But their idea was to cut a hole out of her skull, install a piece of hardware, which is it's called a stent. So it's basically a drain that allows her to disperse the fluids throughout her neck, or throughout her body through her neck. They were going to run a hose that was connected to the stent, and then it'd run down and it'd disperse it throughout her body, and it'd just rid of it like it normally should. But because of the cyst, it wasn't doing that. Fast forward to the day of the surgery. Months of emotions, months of pain, months of thinking. I mean, it's brain surgery. There's no upside to it. Nobody wants to hear it, especially not some new parents that just had a baby. We sat there waiting for a doctor to show up, only to find out that our doctor that we planned all of this, that we entrusted him into taking care of our daughter, was tied up in another surgery. I mean, I get it. Doctors are busy. People need saving. It was not a good start. Let's just say that. Nerves on edge. We get there, they change the plan last minute. Offer us a new doctor. The doctor comes in, he introduces himself. explains that yes, he has done these before. This isn't just a one off type of thing. And wanted to let us know that he had an idea. He thought of a way that may be more beneficial, that might be a different route where we didn't have to install the hardware. And so we were open to listening to it. He said that your body has a natural aqueduct that runs through it. It's in the same place they were going to run the hose. But if he was to open it from the brain to where it's at, that it would naturally just disperse of it without having to have anything installed. Sounds great. We still have risks. I mean, it's still brain surgery. They still have to cut in and then cut down to make it a passage. So we gave it thought. I mean, the amount of thought that we had to put in our heads that day was unbelievable. So we had to contemplate whether we wanted to try the hardware, which, okay, we knew it would work, but then we have the risk of children making fun of her. We have external hardware all the rest of her life to where she can't play sports. Or we have this new process that may work. The doctor believes it. And then we have no extra hardware. She can continue on like a normal toddler would do. So we gave it some hours, asked some people upstairs what they thought. And at the end of the couple hours, we came to the conclusion that I think we should do it. So time goes on. It seems like it just stood still. What seemed like an eternity, I mean, it was probably only 3 or 4 hours. And then in walks the doctor. So our doctor walks in to the waiting room, pulls us into a private room, as they do at Children's Mercy. We sat down, and he said the surgery was a success, that they were able to get the fluid to disperse the way it's supposed to. But during the surgery, she had a blood vessel rupture. Now, to explain this in the easiest way I can, the brain is like a sponge. When you squeeze a sponge, you can shrink it down to fit almost in the palm of your hand. But when you let go of it, it springs right back out to the way it was. Well, when all the fluid dispersed throughout her, or started dispersing throughout her body, it ruptured a vessel. And when it ruptured that vessel, it started bleeding. And bleeding. And it happened so quickly that she ended up going into cardiac arrest and had to be revived. But she was sitting in the pediatric ICU, and that we could go see her. For the remainder of my life, I will never forget coming around the corner and hearing her cry. It was terrifying, and it's just something. There's 15 babies on that floor, but you know that one is yours. You just feel so helpless. Recovery started in our room. which would be our new hotel room for the next 2 weeks. Tempe was pushing through pretty well, and she was just, blowing them out of the water. It was amazing. And then one day we were eating, I think it was applesauce, and she had a seizure. You can't make this stuff up. There was anything that could happen to that little girl, it happened within the first 2 weeks. So again, we're freaking out, thinking, what is going to happen? Is this something that's going to be the rest of her life too? But the doctor came in. He said, don't worry about it. The brain does not like blood. And when the blood ends up coming in contact with the brain, it shocks it. And when it shocks it, it can cause a seizure. So she had to be put on seizure medication and monitored over the next, I think it was a week. So 2 agonizing weeks later, we were cleared to leave. And since then, Tempe has never had another seizure. And she's just excelling at everything she puts her little mind to. The hospital, Children's Mercy here in Kansas City, I think it was the Adele address, they've actually used Tempe's surgery as an innovation to the way they do craniotomies, because of the fact that if she would have had a stent, she wouldn't be here because they wouldn't have been able to catch it in time. And just the new innovation to where they could run it down instead of having to install hardware. So we have a very close bond, and still to this day, we still talk to the nurse that helped deliver her. One thing that this whole ordeal, if there's anything to be learned from it, don't take anything for granted. I could be sitting here telling a whole different story about how I lost my daughter, but I'm not. I'm telling a story about how she survived a brain surgery and is still living without any issues whatsoever. So I am never going to take anything for granted when it comes to my daughter.